Okay. Greetings. Greetings, everyone. I'm so glad to be here with you today. It is Tuesday, September 29th. And I'm here. I'm going to give you guys just a couple of moments to roll in before I begin. Let's make sure everything is on. Great. Awesome. So today's topic, I wanted to talk about the moon and its connection to the womb, or how your womb is connected to the moon and why you should know this. So let's start off by just talking calendars, right? The Gregorian calendar is a calendar that we are following right now. This is a calendar of 12 months. We have 29, 30, and 31 days in the month. And we know that it's not an exact science, because every fourth year we have a leap year. So we know that the way that the calendar was created was not created with the exact calibrations in mind. We call this calendar a calendar of war, because it's based off of finances, based off of money, and based off of power control, right? So the original calendar that we used to follow, that most people on the planet used to follow at some point, was the lunar calendar. And the lunar calendar that was followed was a 3-week month, and every month had 10 days. Right? Now, if you know anything about the lunar calendar, you know that it has 29 and a half days, and this doesn't change, right? This cycle was more exact. This cycle was exact. We still have a lunar calendar. We still work with 13 moons. It hasn't changed. It's just that based off of who is in control now and what was put into play those years ago, we don't follow it. And because we're not following it, we are actually not in sync and not in alignment. Now, the female cycle, a woman's cycle, lasts 4 weeks, right? Oftentimes when I have conversations with women and I ask them, okay, well, how long is your menstrual cycle? And most women will be like, well, my period was here for X amount of days, and it comes usually around this time of month. Okay. But that doesn't tell me necessarily how long your cycle is. Some women bleed for less than 27 days. Some women bleed for more than 35 days, and that's considered irregular. Your cycle should be between 27 to 35 days each month. If it's longer than that or shorter than that, it's irregular. Okay. Within the female cycle, within our 4-week cycle of menstruation, follicular, ovulation, and luteal, we have our own 4 phases. Each week of the cycle, we go into something else, right? Different hormones are working, different emotions are at play, different ways of thinking and being and doing. And the lunar cycle does the exact same thing. I want to show you the correlations, because we must remember that once upon a time, before time is as it is now, mothers used to calculate the birth of the babies based on how many moons have passed, right? Hunters used to count the time before the animals would return, or the time the animals would leave, based on the amount of moons that they have seen, right? So this isn't something that's new. This isn't anything that's new age that people haven't heard before. This is information that has actually been taken away from us, that has been suppressed. And because it has been taken away from us and suppressed, we're seeing the suppression come through with how women are able to relate to themselves, to their cycles, to the environment around them, and how everyone else is also responding. I mean, there's more involved in it, but once you recognize and once you see and know that, the reasons for harmonious flow are not in place, right? In our everyday lives, you start to question things. Well, how come things are like this, and how can we do this? Imagine 29, 30, and 31 days, like you're going, going, going. It's a very linear, it's a straight line that you're working with. But when you start to slow back, when you start to slow down and lean back, then you can see the spiral, right? The spiral that's happening with existence and with time. It's not a linear experience. So this is something that I needed to make sure and clarify with you, right? So the mothers of old, the midwives, the aunties, les grand-mères, the grandmothers, the elders, they used to count by the moons. The Native Americans counted by the moons. And so pregnancy was counted by the moons. We had, hunting was counted by the moons. And so women's wellness in 2020 should begin to be more focused on the moon. One other thing I want to mention too is that in the hospitals, oftentimes you'll hear nurses and doctors tell you that on the full moon, you have the crazies that come in all night long. And why is that? La lune, in French, lune, lunacy, right? It's all connected. It's all connected. And actually, I won't even go into that one. I'll do that in another video, right? So women have 4 phases of their cycles based off of what's happening in their body. They're either menstruating and bleeding, or the ovum is preparing the eggs, the ovaries are preparing the ovum, or the egg is looking to be fertilized, or the egg is preparing to be released. Right? And the same thing with the moons. You have the new moon, you have the first quarter moon, you have the full moon, and you have the third quarter moon, right? So this is where we see the correspondence. Now, it even goes further than that. I mean, the moon actually has 8 phases, but we're only breaking it down into 4. The times of a woman's cycle when she ovulates and when she's bleeding, oftentimes, it's not the same thing for everyone, but oftentimes they correlate with the moon. So you have full moon ovulation, women who will ovulate with the full moon, and you have women who will bleed with the new moon, right? And they've done many scientific studies that prove that this is a phenomenon that happens. Many babies tend to be born closer to one cycle more than another, right? So all of these things are showing us, okay, well, there are correlations that maybe we should look a little bit deeper into. The moon function seems to be an outer or an external manifestation of what's happening on the internal side, right, for women. Men as well. Men have their cycles as well. I just need to say that men have their cycles as well. We're just focusing on women and getting women to get back into rhythm so that they can be the timekeepers that we are. And the last thing that I wanted to mention and talk about with regards to how the womb is connected to the lunar cycle is based off of my own experience. I went through postpartum depression, and one of the biggest challenges, greetings, that I had during this time of postpartum depression, I can tell you, I mean, it was a couple of years. And one of the biggest challenges that I had was time. I couldn't keep track of time. So for me, I would, create a schedule, create a program, and I would begin to follow it, and then I would hit a bump in the road. And I began to recognize that it was at a certain point in my cycle. And this is after paying close attention to it. And greetings, good day. And once I recognized this, I started to see, okay, I would fall out of line, but it wouldn't just be for a few days. Sometimes it would go on for weeks. Sometimes the confusion would go on for months. And so I didn't get it, right? So I wasn't able to maintain the house. I couldn't make my bed. I couldn't get the children doing things. I just couldn't seem to get things together. And once I began to pay even more finite attention to my cycle, because I had to ground myself with something. Because I didn't know where I was. And so once I began paying attention to, okay, my day 1 is here, I'm bleeding here, my ovulation is here. And so I'm working with these 2 grounding points and then paying attention to what's happening around me. I began to see, okay, what the cycle was and what the pattern was. And I was able to anticipate, right, the off moments. I was able to anticipate those moments where I wasn't able to focus and maintain my schedule, or where I felt as though I was extremely unclear in my mind and in my actions and in the words that I was speaking with others. And so that's it. For me, it has worked for me. It has worked for clients when it comes to stabilizing, many things in their life, not just their menstrual cycles. And I wanted to leave you with that, for you to think about, your relationship to your cycle, your relationship to the external world. And if you do pay attention, greetings, thank you so much for that love. And if you do pay attention to how these cycles and how these phases affect you, because they do. And the more that you're able to be aware of what's happening, the more you're able to pick up on your intuition and on your intuitive side. Because remember, I'm mentioning it's an internal thing and an external thing, but internally, the shifts actually show us that they're coming. They give us a preview that they're about to happen. And Monique says, oh my God, my cycle is all over the place. Yes, Monique, so you've got to just pay attention, honestly, if you want to be able to track that. Like example, we have a full moon that's happening on the 1st. So you should look at that. Okay, so where am I on my cycle for this full moon? And just start, paying attention to what's happening in your body with your temperature, with your heat, with your cravings, with your discharge, all kinds of things. Awesome. So I want to thank you all for being here with me. If you are catching the replay, make sure and hashtag replay. Make sure and share this video with somebody who you think can benefit from this information and need to track this in an app. Yes, the apps work, but I do want to suggest that you learn your body's fluctuations, because sometimes the apps do not follow your specific cycle, from what I've heard other people saying. And the other piece to that is then you don't actually know what's happening. Then you have to check your technology to find out what's happening in your physicality. So if you are going to get an app, and if you are going to use an app, make sure that as you're paying attention to what's happening in the app, follow the symptoms and signs of your body. Okay? Beautiful. So, yes, if you are interested in finding out anything or finding out more about the work that I do, please make sure to come at me in my comments and let me know I'm interested. We can have a conversation, and that's it. I will be back to give you some more juice. You're welcome. You're welcome. Later on this week. So y'all be well. Take care, and we'll meet again.